But for as rational as Tiki Barber wants to be, for as calming as Tiki wants to be, what happened last night is what I've warned you. What happened last night in Atlanta was the same crap dressed up in a different year. The Mets have been hot. The Mets have been great. The roster's different. The attitude's different. And yet, just like 1998, and just like 1999, and just like 2022, they went down to Georgia and they got smoked. So you can tell me it's different. History has nothing to do with it. But last night, even you sat there as Michael Harris was Superman on the field. You even watched this as Spencer Schwellenbach ran the Mets down for 7 beautiful innings. You even know there's just something in the air about when the Mets go to Atlanta, and it should scare the crap out of all of us.
You still got a 1-game lead. That's all I'm saying. You still got a 1-game lead. You had a bad day. It is what it is. Francisco Lindor was not available until almost he was available at the end. You still got a 1-game lead. Chill out.
Chill out.
It's in front of you.
It's in front of you.
I hate to be Boonism right now, but it's in front of you. Mm-hmm. You control what you can control. Yeah, it sucks that Chris Sale's on the mound tonight, but it is what it is.
Assuming they play tonight.
They're not playing tonight, by the way. There's no way they're playing. If they are, they're not finishing today.
We'll get into the scenarios involving Mets Braves, but I try to be rational. I really do. I try to understand that Jay Payton making a base running decision in 1998 has nothing to do with 2024. I try to be rational that most of the Met lineup last night was not in the lineup back in 2022. Mm-hmm. The rotation is different. The manager is different. Everything is different. But you cannot blame me. You cannot blame any other Met fan for sitting down last night and looking at the TV and saying, I'm living in a time warp. I'm watching the same crap I saw 2 years ago and I saw 24 years ago. So you're right that it's all in front of them. You're even right if you want to bring up the Diamondbacks collapsing, which they are. Like, the Mets can still make the postseason. Right. I get that.
They can almost back their way in.
They could.
As uncomfortable as that will feel as a Met fan.
But right now, you can't question why we fear the Atlanta Braves. Hopefully last night was a lesson for you, Tiki. Mm-hmm. And for you, Sean, who told me it's Ghostbusters week. And for you, Positive Tommy, that, hey, they're the Braves. And for whatever reason, it may not make sense. When the devil goes down to Georgia, we get smoked.
He's looking for a soul to steal.
Well,
and he stole yours.
Yeah, it's been stolen for 25 years, Steve.
I hear you, man.
You hear me?
I listened to the Mets chat all last night. I actually had to mute it because I was tired of hearing the negativity. Don't you see now, Tiki? Don't you see where the off? I turned it off because at the end of the day, it's still there for the taking. Now, the circumstances are not ideal. If I had to bet on it, I'd say you're going to be even after today if the game is played. Simply because it's Chris Sale. He's been amazing. But that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that the season is doomed or that the playoff chances are gone. This team has played too well for too long to lay down now. And that's my takeaway from this entire season. Mm-hmm. I had sloughed it off. This is just an evaluation year. So whatever happens, happens. And then you can't help but start believing because of how well this team had played. And even no matter what adversity came their way, they found a way to bounce back. And so don't you have to believe that that's what's going to happen now? This is a little tad of adversity because it's the Braves. Now it hurts more because the history, but it's a tad bit of it. Don't you expect them to bounce back? Don't you expect Mendy to have this team playing at a different level tonight than they did a night ago?
I'll tell you why I'm not as confident as I should be. And it really starts with something that Steve Gelb said on the broadcast last night and something even Howie Rose said last night. And it's this idea, this fiction that continues to be repeated, that this team's different than 2022. I hear that a lot.
Well, it is.
This team is in roster construction, it's very different.
And that's what we're talking about.
No, that's not what we're talking about. What I've heard was, well, that team, they weren't so mentally tough. That team, they weren't having fun. like that team always had all these things that were wrong with them that we're talking about now after the fact.
Yeah.
Let me make this clear because I think this is the reality. When the Mets went to Atlanta, despite their struggles in September, did you guys really think the Mets, who were about to win 100 games, weren't mentally tough? With veterans like Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom? Did anyone really think that? Or Teak, was that invented to explain what happened when they collapsed?
No, I think
it is a convenient explanation after the fact. And Gary Cohen, God bless Gary Cohen, because when Steve Gelb started repeating this, Gary said, because Steve's like, well, they were tight last year. Brandon Nimmo admitted we're tight last year.
Pete
Alonso, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We're tight. And Gary very calmly, and I'm so glad he said this calmly, because I was screaming this at the TV. And Gary said, well, they're down 5-0 right now. They're doing nothing against Spencer Schwellenbach. Maybe they're going to start to get tight like they did 2 years ago. And it was almost like, oh, gee, could that happen? Yeah. So the idea that, 2022 is different. Stop bringing it up. Why? Nobody thought they were going to collapse like dogs in Atlanta.
Whoa.
Nobody thought that. Nobody thought they were going to come home a week later and, again, collapse like dogs to the San Diego Padres. You say it now because it's convenient. It's so convenient to say, well, you know what? Bunch of veterans, they didn't care. They were mentally weak. They were pressing. If this team loses, you're going to say the same crap about this team.
If this team loses, you can say maybe they're not mentally, the fortitude is not there. But I think the 2022 team was more attrition than anything else. I don't think it was mental lack of toughness. I think they just wore out. Scherzer certainly was worn out. DeGrom had lost his ability to do anything other than throw a fastball. Now, again, his line wasn't horrible, but I mean, it was demoralizing giving up home run after home run after home run, 3 of them to be
So
exact.
why wouldn't that be the case last night?
So
why wouldn't they fit the same thing you just described? Why?
It doesn't feel that same. It doesn't feel like you have a 42-year-old or however old Scherzer was at that time.
Time out. You have a starting pitcher who's thrown more innings than he's thrown in 6 years. You have a lineup that features a bunch of core guys that play every single day.
Gave up 4 runs.
And they got 4 hit. So, again, you're doing the convenient thing. It's so convenient to describe what happened 2 years ago when I'm telling you the same thing could happen again.
Yeah.
How do we know it's different?
I think 2 years ago was more a team that was worn out. They were grinding to win the division. They were grinding to try to be.
This team isn't grinding?
Well, they are, but it's not. There's the age isn't on this team like that, like it was on that team, right? The injury history isn't on this team like it was on that team.
Disagree. You have a rotation that's thrown a ton more innings than they've thrown in a long time.
Yeah, but they're not 40 years old.
Okay.
I know what you're saying, but I can't believe in that because for the last 2 weeks we've been talking about how good this starting rotation is. Hell, when we were at S&Y.
Yeah.
That's all we were talking about, wasn't it?
And what did we do?
How elite the starting rotation had been and how they had become at the end of the season in the most critical time of the year. So why did that change?
Why did that change with the Mets in 2022? See, again, this is
because
the convenience.
They were old.
but Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom barely pitched that year. They weren't wearing down.
Okay.
And by the way, they didn't hit. Their stars didn't hit in the 3 most important games against Atlanta. And through 1 game so far, guess what happened? The same crap. Other than Mark Vientos, nobody hit.
All right, so can we give credit to Schwellenbach?
No, I'm not doing that. We could have done that 2 years ago, too. Let's just give credit to any opponent that beats the Mets. Look, I'm not trying to tell you they're going to collapse, even though it may sound that way. I just get so angry when I hear people try to explain why this is different than 2022. But you know how it can be different, Tiki? Win.
Yeah, but
go make it different by winning. They didn't win last night. They no-showed. They got their ass kicked. But there was nothing different about last night.
It sounds to me like you're just discounting someone else, that is the opponent, playing damn good. Like, because that happens.
Did the Mets play well last night?
No, I'm not talking about the Mets.
Did they play good defense last night?
I'm talking about the Braves. I'm talking about the Braves. They had a starting pitcher, even though he's young as hell, in Schwellenbach, who just pitched well.
Yeah.
Period.
He did fine.
Period.
Okay.
Why can't you give him credit as opposed to saying, oh, the bats are dead and Luis Severino's pitched more innings than he's ever pitched, and that's why he gave up 4 runs.
I'm combating the convenient things people say to explain 2 years ago. You started bringing up, well, they were wearing down 2 years ago. How do you know they wouldn't be wearing down now? See, History's written by the results. If they lose 3 games to Atlanta, there'll be new stories people will tell to explain what happened, just like stories were created after 2022 to explain what happened.
Can we let them lose 3 games to Atlanta before we have this conversation?
Tiki, I don't want to hear, and it pissed me off to no end, about why this team's different than 2022, while all they did last night was do the same crap. Don't tell me. Don't spit on me and tell me it's rain.
I'm not spitting on you.
I'm not saying you.
It is going to rain outside, though. Sometime.
Was that a good analogy?
Yeah, it was.
Don't spit on me and tell me it's rain. Is that a real analogy? Did I hear that somewhere?
Yeah, and besides spit, they use something else.
I think it's a different.
They use number 1
bodily
for the bathroom.
fluid.
Oh, well, I cleaned it up. I tried to be clean about it. I just don't know. To my fellow Met fans who want to be positive, and I want to be positive. Like, I don't think overall I'm negative about the team. I think I'm negative about this situation because this situation always ends the same way. And I'm laughing about it because it's the definition of insanity. You know what it would be similar to?
What's that?
And tell me if I'm going too far with this, Yankee fans. It would be like Minnesota sports fans talking themselves into why it's going to be different when the Twins play the Yankees in the playoffs this time.
Yeah, but the problem for New York Met fans is that you're not trying to talk yourself into why it's going to be different. You're talking yourself into why it's going to be the same. That's what I don't understand. Why is this negative bent?
Because did you watch last night? It was the same thing.
Yeah, but did you think they were sweeping them?
No, but... And I really believe this. I said this last night after the game on the Rico. I'll say it again, and you may call me a liar. If they had lost the game 8-7, if they had lost the game differently, I think I would have said, hard-fought loss, let's bounce back. They lost a game last night the way they lost every game in 1999 when they were swept by Atlanta, when they went into Atlanta, a game back in the NL East. They lost last night very similarly to the way they lost 3 games to Atlanta back in 2022. It's the same script.
No, they lost last night the same way they lost a terrible game to the Oakland A's at home, and the same way that they lost a terrible game on Saturday to the Philadelphia Phillies. They lost this way a million times this year, and you know what these Mets did in 2024? They bounced the freak back because this is the most resilient Met team that we've seen for the last 15 years. So stop walking around here like a loser.
Yeah, and stop putting your supposed stars on these pedestals because that's where the issue is.
What does that mean?
Nimmo, Alonso.
Why? Brandon
Taylor,
Nimmo was 0 for 4 yesterday. Pete Alonso was 0 for 3.
I know.
So, like, what would it be?
My point is you keep saying, Nimmo's got to do this, and Alonso's got to do this, and Tyron Taylor deserves to be in the lineup. He's got to do X, Y, Z. Alvarez is different because he's still young and he had some ups and downs this year. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you have these, like, massive expectations for these guys who you think you can count on, but you can't.
So what you're saying is, don't count on them. Blow it up at the end of the year. They're not that good. Is that your point to me?
I'm saying.
By the way, if they get swept by the Braves and miss the playoffs, a lot of people will have that opinion.
You have to earn the right to believe that they're going to do those things.
Brandon Nimmo has driven in 87 runs this this Pete Alonso in a down year has 34 home runs and 88 RBIs.
But the most important game of the season, according to you, was game 1 of this last Braves series. And what did they do?
Yeah, they came up small. Okay, so you agree with me. They've come up small in big spots. And the Braves, like last year or 2 years ago, I always think of last year, but it's 2 years ago, and like last night, their stars came through.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. Michael Harris came through. Matt Olson, I know he didn't have the big home run, but that base hit that he got, or I'm sorry, that walk that he got in the 3rd inning, and that was a great at-bat, basically helped set the inning up and make it even bigger.
Right.
Like their stars came through, the Met stars came up small. And that has been the same story forever. And I want to be wrong. I want to come in here or hug my wife and tell my kids, hey, we beat the Braves. It's different. But it's never been different. It's never been different. So to my fellow Met fan, if you're believing and you came into this series believing everything's different, did last night change you at all?
1 game.
Did it change you at all, positive, Tommy?
1 game.
You know what, Evan? This is positive, Tommy. I'm going to quote 2 great philosophers, Timon and Pumbaa. You got to put the past behind you.
I can't when they keep repeating
Evan,
it, bro.
what did we open the show with yesterday? In
I don't
case you
remember.
forgot
I don't
about
remember.
it was Luis Severino in the big spots not always being what he is, what we expect him to be. And last night,
Don't tell me he was great. I know he had a lot of bad luck. I'm not going to destroy him, but let's not act like Luis Severino's 4-inning, 4-run
not
performance
suggesting
was
that
money.
at all. There was bad luck in that inning. My point is, and I think everybody said it perfectly here, is it's one game. And this team has bounced back.
It's not one game.
Yes, it is.
That's the difference between you and I. And by the way,
how is it anything more than one game?
I'll tell you why. Because of every time they've played Atlanta, every time they've played him in a big spot. And, Brian, do you guys remember Brian Schneider? He was a catcher for the New York Mets.
Yes, we do.
And I want to tell you a quick story because I think this will make sense. Brian Schneider became the catcher for the Mets in 2008, the year after they collapsed in 07. He replaced Paul LaDuca. And he became the weekly spot with me and Joe. And Gio will tell you this story. Me and Gio went to a Met game early, and we were talking to Brian Schneider, and we were bringing up the collapse. Right. And Brian said to both Gio and I don't get why you guys always bring up the collapse. I wasn't on the team. I wasn't here. I'm new. This is different. And we did the same thing. You're on the team now. And then they collapsed. And I remember saying to Brian Schneider, what do you think now? And he's like, well, I own it now. You own your history. And sometimes it gets repeated. And until we see something different in the month of September against these Atlanta Braves, it's tough to believe it's going to be different.
Why do you pre-talk about it? That's what's baffling.
I'm not pre-talking about it. They lost last night 5-1. The same way they've always lost.
You said it was going to happen. You believe that it's going to happen.
So you're mad at me for being right about a prediction?
No.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I told you the truth.
It just becomes this self-fulfilling nonsense.
Tiki had nothing to do with the Mets losing last night, and you know it.
I know you didn't.
So then what did I do wrong?
But why do you expect to be any different if you expected it to be just like
Because I don't expect it to be different when they face the Braves. I said to you 2 days ago, I expect things to go badly.
And so what do you want to do? You want to talk yourself down so that when the opposite happens, you're surprised?
Do you want me
it makes you feel better because you had such low expectations for your team that when they actually surprise you, that you're like, oh, well, I actually feel doubly better.
You want me to pretend? Is that what it was? Because your option is, why are you saying that?
I'm just saying,
because I believe it.
Whether we're talking about sports, whether we're talking about a business interview, a job interview, whatever, you got to believe that it's going to happen. What's the point of... why torture yourself? If you love sports so much, why torture yourself?
Can I give you an example?
With believing that the converse is going to happen.
I'm going to give you an example. Maybe this will make a lot of sense to you. Hey, Sean Morash.
How are you?
Are the Giants going to beat the Cowboys tomorrow?
No, they're going to get smoked.
Okay. Because as sports fans, we sometimes have opinions that we hope we're wrong about. Mm-hmm. I sat down last night with my scorebook hoping to be wrong.
Have the Giants been the best team in football since July, Evan? It's a little different. Apples and oranges, pal.
No,
exactly.
It's not apples and oranges.
It is absolutely apples and oranges.
The Cowboys are your daddies, and you're right, the Giants haven't been on some amazing run, but I don't understand why a Giant fan would go into a game against Dallas or a game against Philly expecting the worst, and then after the worst actually happens in one game, you look at me like I've got 10 heads? No, I was the one person who was right. And I didn't want to be. You know this. You think I give a rat's ass about being right? I don't want to be right. No, I want to be happy and wrong rather than right and miserable.
I have no idea what you want. I honestly
want my team to win, bro. What do you mean, what do I want?
It doesn't sound like it, though.
That's ridiculous. Why? Because I call what ends up happening?
Yes.
It's a lot easier to call negativity than positivity, which is why Lugauer really is a unbelievable.
You're a gym.
Well,
You're a gym.
Can I be positive? And Evan, spoiler alert's going to yell at me. He doesn't want to hear this, but you're going to hear.
I'm going to shut my mic off. I will not yell at you. I promise.
Here's why last night was different. After the Mets lost in Atlanta, what happened a few hours later? The Diamondbacks lost by 11 runs because the power of positivity. Even in a loss, something positive happened. The Mets could see that score and go, all right, great. We didn't lose any ground on the Diamondbacks. Let's get them tomorrow. The universe usually, when this happens with the Mets, doesn't work in our favor. It is now because of the positivity.
There it is.
They have to exercise the demons in Atlanta. More for us as fans because of, negative Dan and negative Evan and all that stuff. I watched the Rico last night. People were emailing him at 7:40, basically saying the season's over.
Michael Harris's first at-bat was the end of the game to a lot of Met fans. Hey, 9-pitch at-bat, Sevy couldn't put him away, single to center, we're done. By the way, I thought the same thing, and I was right.
What, should have hit him?
No, it was just a sign that things were bad. So to my fellow Met fan, and the Yankees, we'll get to you too, Giants, Cowboys, we'll get to you too. Did last night remind you that we just don't beat the Braves? And we better hope it continues raining. We better hope it continues raining so that the next time the Mets play the Braves, they already have a playoff spot wrapped up, which is possible. We'll get to the weather and what may and may not happen. plus your calls at 888-808-1019. We are live from the Town Fair Tire Studios, powered by Town Fair Tire. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Get in on the action with Jackpocket, America's #1 lottery app. New customers, your first Powerball or Mega Millions ticket is free when you download the Jackpocket app and you use code radio.